Hello everybody, Andrea here. I was just getting ready to make a guitar video for you when I started getting these messages about, have you heard Marshall sold to China? And so I looked into it, and in fact, Marshall was just sold, at least the majority stake of it, to a Chinese company or conglomerate, Hongshan, I think it's called. And people are concerned because Marshall is the quintessential, British amp company, but maybe people forget that Marshall hasn't been strictly a British company for a long time. I think it was 2010 when it was sold to Sounds, which is a Swedish company based in Stockholm. And that's when people were really concerned that Marshall would now stop making guitar amps and start making Bluetooth speakers and headphones. And there was a real concern there, which kind of proved unfounded because in the last as a matter of fact, I think in the last few years Marshall has seen a bit of a resurgence in their amp offerings. They made some really cool amplifiers, and just at NAMM show last week they announced 3 more amps, although of course they are kind of reissues of the 59, the 800 and the 900, if I'm not mistaken, with a few mods, but certainly they're looking at the past. But when it comes to Marshall, every time they make something new, maybe with the exception of JVMs, people are like, oh yeah, but what does it sound compared to that or that? That's kind of the idea. And so I find the Marshall amp offering to be quite satisfying, as a matter of fact. Also, the idea that now Marshall will have problems or will have a decrease in quality, that's to be demonstrated. First of all, I think Marshall is keeping 20% of the company, so it's not like they're going to become a non-existent entity. The Marshall family still owns a good size of the company. Also, the other thing is Marshall, I think, has dabbled with some amps made in Asia. I think in Vietnam. I don't have them. My amps are made in England. Most of them are old, actually. And I have to tell you, some of these amps, they've had trouble too. The JCM 2000 back there, I don't know if you can see it, that one there, I had to replace the board myself. I had some issues with the JVM. In live shows, these two have been there. These two have been fine, but it's not like because they were made in England, there were never any issues. As a matter of fact, Marshall aficionados, they have whole forums online with troubleshooting Marshall. So I don't find that things that are made in Asia necessarily are worse. As a matter of fact, I got this Indonesia-made Squire bass, which has become my favorite bass, and I play it basically every day. Sometimes stuff made in Asia doesn't quite work so well. So I think it's more of an index of what the main company requires and wants and invests, rather than where stuff is made. Which, by the way, it hasn't been said or hasn't been announced or hasn't been implied that now Marshall, the Marshall factory would actually move. I don't think so. For what I researched, I haven't seen that. But even if that were the case, I wouldn't worry too much about it until we have something on our hands. Finally, the concept of now, because now people are worried because this company, this big company, has made a statement. First of all, they have stakes of all kinds of weird stuff, fashion, I think, and furniture. They're not really dedicated to music itself. The phrase that kind of worries me is that it says that we aim to basically expand, the reach of the company. So making the products available to more and more people, which to me sounds like we might see some cost cutting, and that's speculation on my part. But that's where I would be maybe a bit concerned. I know Marshall has a lower budget series of amps, which are the little ones. I think it's called the Studio series. They're like 20 watts, sound great, but they are different from the big ones. If you haven't heard a 100-watt Marshall and then a 50-watt Marshall and then a 20-watt Marshall, you can do that actually with the JCM 2000 series. They have a lot of levels for it, and it's not just a matter of volume, it's just a matter of size. It just sounds different. And I would hate for it to become rare to find a 100-watt Marshall, because they probably don't sell just as well as the smaller ones. So hopefully we'll retain the old Marshall stamp, and also I'm not certainly against smaller amps and more affordable ones. Marshall has been doing that for ages. I remember when I started out, I was 14 or 15, the valve state Marshalls were the rage because every sound company where we went to play concerts in schools and bars and clubs, you know, we almost always had the valve states. And so when we actually had or got a real big Marshall tube amp, that was like an event. I have a story on that and I'll tell it maybe some other time. But so that's my 2 cents on the Marshall thing. I wouldn't worry too much about it until we know more. I think the same happened with Moog. Moog, there was a lot of concern, and then when it sold, and then it died down really quick because who knows what happens. Apple is made in China, right? Or Asia, a lot of it, and they seem to work pretty fine. You know, I got my screen, I got my computer, I got my iPhone, I even have a watch, and they've worked great. And so I wouldn't equate geography with quality, although certainly the tradition of certain companies, and Marshall is a big one here. It's like saying Ferrari, right? I would maybe keep an eye on that, you know, keep the tradition alive, and if the money comes from here or comes from there, as long as we keep that heritage, then we should be fine. All right, so that's my 2 cents. Please let me know below what you think, and stay tuned. There will be a guitar video coming very soon. Thank you so much as always for watching. See you on the next one.